So we can go on. And for some of you guys, I don't know, I'm Fahan, I'm the technical trainer here in Dahua Nordic. I do these webinars, do these certification trainings and so on and so on. And I should usually try to help you highlight and understand these more complex solutions better and simpler. So for today, what I planned was, first of all, the agenda. What is full color? In order to answer that, we need to go a little bit back and understand how is a colored image produced, what does it require, and how come or how does IR cameras work. So also we need to understand where do we need it, why these full color cameras, what is the difference between an IR camera and a full color camera, which are the benefits of it. What do I gain or what do I lose from an IR camera compared to a full color camera? So not saying that an IR camera isn't good. So don't get me wrong. Those are two different things. So also the difference between the full color 1.0. I assume most of you guys already know the full color 1.0 and which advances or what to say, which new steps did we take in order to improve the 2.0? What is the difference? Because that's usually the first thing everybody cares about. What is the difference? Whenever there is a upgrade on your phone in terms of the operating system, what is the difference, right? So, and then we're gonna look through the different models that are available in the full color 2.0 range, which different models are available and which should you choose when. And then at the end, the Q&A session. But let's get started. So the first question is that how come we humans can't see at night? Why is it that when everything becomes dark, and yes, it might sound a little bit stupid, but it's actually a very important question to know the answer to in order to understand CCTV very well and also low light performance. So first of all, the reason why we can't see is because there is no light. And also we are not able to see anything of color. Those colors disappear. Because if we don't, if you have a very good camera and you don't have good lighting conditions, you can at least sometimes get something useful out of it. But if you have a poor camera and you don't have the correct lighting conditions like outdoor, usually you won't get anything useful because you're not able to utilize it. So first of all, white light, which is from the sun, consists of all colors. And when I say all colors, it means that whenever there is, for instance, a red background and you have light from outside, it is the red reflections that we see. So only red light is passing through. So whenever we have white light, we more or less have all colors. And no white light, nothing to see. That's why we can't see anything. So first of all, if we have a scenario like this, where we have plenty of daylight, we have great colors, the description of a person or vehicle or a shop or whatsoever in a walking street is very easy to see because we have plenty of light. But the problem occurs sometimes when everything gets a little bit darker, gets harder to see everything. That's also how it is for us humans. Apart from me being out there trying to do videos for you guys to show you the advantages of full color cameras or IR cameras, PTZ cameras, or whatsoever there could be. But all in all, no light, no image, and that's period. So this could go for IR or white light, whatsoever, no light, no image. Because the first thing, as I said before, the colored spectrum for us humans is a very narrow scope, which consists of all color. Whenever we go beyond that, when we are talking about IR, it is actually a separated or infrared. It's a separate wavelength that we humans can't see. So the camera can see these wavelengths, but we can't see. But there are a couple of disadvantages still, stuff that we don't get to see. So whenever we talk about IR cameras, they usually range from the nanometer above 700 or 850, 700, then we can't see it. But then we go into thermal as well and infrared, generally IR cameras. But why can IR cameras see at night And why is it black and white? That's also the next question, right? The first thing is that they're projecting their own light. IR cameras can, or what to say, IR illuminators, I would rather call it. They illuminate and then the camera utilizes that light. So, but sometimes it's not necessarily sufficient, and we can only see whatever the camera is allowing us to see in terms of sensor size. So if you have a camera with poor low light performance, doesn't matter if you have a lot of IR, it won't do as good. Compared to if you have a camera that has a larger sensor, at least you have some way of utilizing that IR light that you're projecting by yourself as well. So of course, if we have light coming from outside, we would only be able to utilize best the IR illuminators separated. So, but the problem sometimes is when you have cameras that don't have such a big sensor, sometimes it ends up looking like this. Have anybody tried something similar to this? Not that it can't work. The fact is the surroundings can be a little bit hard to see because the IR is very focused. And that's not necessarily because of the IR is a bad IR. That's usually most because the camera is not well at adapting to the scene. It's not utilizing that IR very well. Instead, we would rather have something like this, where we have a larger sensor, which is utilizing whatever is projected from the camera much better than anything. Then you can see the lighting is usually evenly distributed. Any type of camera, if it's a color camera, like a full color camera, or if it's a IR camera, usually they would always struggle with tough lighting conditions coming from one side. If we have like an even lighting, then that would definitely be better. But the sensor can sometimes compensate for these kind of things. So we can get good images with IR, nothing there. But the problem is the description. Many times the description of people can be very hard because, as you can see from the image, everybody is wearing either darker colors or what to say, black colors, gray colors, and white. That's it. So no other description. This is missing, and which creates an incentive for full color cameras. So of course, missing colors, missing description, it's hard to solve a crime that way. Instead, we could have something called full color, which is significantly better. So whenever it gets dark, at least we have somewhat a colored image, because that moonlight or light that's coming from the sky is usually sufficient to at least get something out of it, where you're able to see that there's a person. Sometimes you can be lucky enough to get a colored description, but of course, everything is based on how dark it is. If we are talking city surveillance, that's usually more than enough lighting. And those of you who have already tried with the, some of you who have already played around with the full color 1.0 have also seen that it actually gives you quite a breathtaking image in terms of how little bit of light we usually have. And that's only been improved. So generally this happens because you have a sensor in the camera that has a much higher sensitivity. And then you are able to use that light much better. Another challenge for the IR camera is usually something looking like this. At least it looks somewhat pretty okay. But as you can see, we have a lot of noise in the image, right? Have anybody tried that? Something similar to that whenever it rains, approximately, or snows? I have for sure, I can tell. So as you can see on the right-hand side, the colored image from my full color camera has no issues whatsoever. It can see clearly. And at this situation, there is not anything separated, like the camera's own white light is not being used in this situation. So we already have one advantage here. So to go back a little bit and talking about what is the definition of a full color camera, first of all, it is a wide aperture. Wide aperture is kind of like a window. And then we are talking about the lens that's allowing light to pass through. But we're going to get back to that. I have a much more clear description of that. So first of all, we have a bright aperture. Usually you call them bright because they are quite, the lens is very open to whatever light there is available. And then you have a highly sensitive sensor, which can convert all of this light coming in, because we already learned that light is all colors. And all these reflections, in order to transmit that into a picture, we need a very high sensitive or a high sensitivity sensor in order to do this, so that we get a colored image. So apart from that, if we didn't have a high sensitivity, usually we would end up with a lot of noise. We don't want that. We want clear images, as clear as possible. Last but not least, advanced image processing, which also goes into this part of getting rid of noise, getting rid of bad pixels. So all of these things, correcting the image, is done by an advanced image processor. Again, which says a lot in terms of we need strong cameras in the hardware part in order to provide something that's useful. So to kind of give you an idea about what full color looks like, first of all, we have classified them in a couple of different versions in terms of when we talk about low light performance. You have the non-starlight cameras, then you had the starlight cameras, which were with starlight sensors from Sony. That was kind of a new stepping stone for low light performance. Then we had the Starlight Plus in 2019, I would say. 2018, yeah, sorry. 2018, we had the Starlight Plus, which jumped quite far compared to what was possible with Starlight. So this means bigger sensors, we get more colored information, even though we don't have enough lighting. And then last but not least, then we had the full color cameras, where we had the most colored information we could ever potentially get out of a camera. So to kind of put those things into perspective, this is kind of how it looks like when you have pitch black environments, more or less. You only have a little bit of lighting from the sky. And this is, by the way, done at 3 a.m. And yes, what am I doing at 3 a.m.? But I think it speaks for itself, right? 3 a.m. in June, that was the only window I had between 3 a.m. and approximately 1 a.m. where it was still dark enough for me to be able to show you the difference. I don't know if you noticed that there were these green boxes around me. I'm walking around with my camera so you can actually see how dark it is. And to me, that's quite remarkable to see. I get so detailed images, I can even read off the t-shirt. But also the fact that I am doing smart motion detection. If you notice the green boxes around me, those are the smart motion detection boxes, which shows that this is a human walking. So I'm actually recording based on not just motion detection where we have pixel changes, but classifying it by humans so that I can search for them very easily. So when should you use full color cameras? So in which scenarios does it make sense? Where does it apply to? There's plenty of them. First of all, if you talk about city surveillance, I have some footage I want to show you later on when we get to the varifocal model, where it actually shows that with some decent lighting from the city, it's more than enough. You get a pretty good description of that person. So city surveillance is great in terms of if you have a car accident, if you have a pickpocket, for instance, general city crime, because you need specific description of that vehicle, which color was it, which model was it, then it's going to be easier to solve a crime if we need to find some person and hold them responsible for this crime. So other parts could be, and then obviously there's plenty of other situations they could be used in city surveillance. That could be missing people. The description of their clothes could be very obvious, or a person that's following next to that missing person, which has a certain appearance. It's very important in order to solve that crime. Other parts could be industrial areas. So in industrial areas, we have very remote locations, don't have so many people walking around, so it's hard to actually see, which is more potentially broken into, I would say. And they are usually more easy targets because there's nobody out there. There might be some security guard driving around, but if we are able to get a colored image, also being able to use a active deterrence feature from the camera, like the two-way talk, usually that scares off a lot of people. So other parts could be construction sites. Construction site is also a great example where we have lots of break-ins. We would generally try to see if we could get some colorful image. IR cameras are usually used on most construction sites, which is working great, by the way, but still we don't have the colored description of that person. Potentially somebody could have seen that person wearing those clothes, which could be easier to identify this person. Could also be a time lapse. I have a small time lapse I'm going to show you at the end. For construction sites, it's very popular to provide the end customer with some type of time lapse in terms of if they're building something, we would like to create something like that. We could do all of that and do the CCTV part directly from one camera. We don't necessarily need an NVR whatsoever, just an SD card and the camera, and obviously some PoE, then we're good to go. Then it could also be private homes. Usually, if you get a color description, it's also important because usually you don't have that many, strangers running around in your backyard or whatsoever. So those people who are walking there, or maybe they lost their dog or whatsoever, entering your premises, it's important to get a clear color description all day and night. Also, amusement parks. Amusement park is also a great example because in amusement parks, many times you have very tough lighting conditions. You have strong light coming from different areas in different colors, which also gives the full color an advantage because it utilizes it much better. So, and last but not least, I would say cafes, restaurants. Great thing about the full color cameras are, first of all, they don't necessarily have to use white light. If you already have a dim lighting, which you usually would have in a cafe or a restaurant, you would usually have enough light to project a clear, colorful image. So first of all, we don't have those red lights making it look like Fort Knox or anything inside the dining area. Usually cameras in dining areas or cafes are not the most popular ones. They don't look great. Nevertheless, they have the right red light, the IR that turns on at night. If we could avoid that, that would be great. Or even better, if we could get a clear colored description of that person who was sitting there, if something happened, some crime was committed, or some fraudulent person came in there and paid off with some phony money or fake money, then that could also be a way to describe very clearly. And second of all, whenever we are using IR cameras in restaurant, one of the bigger problems can be that the IR is not adapting well enough. So the IR is overpowered. And why does that happen? Because the cameras are usually sitting very close or installed very close to where people are sitting. So whenever they look to the sides, the faces are overexposed. Have anybody tried that? When people are too close, then it gets overexposed from the IR? I hope so. I have for certain. I guess everybody else is just an expert and knows exactly what to do about it, right? Okay. So next part, let's talk a little bit about what is the reason or what's happening in the industry. So first of all, I already described this in terms of the city surveillance. Whenever we talk about city surveillance, we can see that there is a tendency that the low light performing cameras, they are growing in the market share. And they're growing because they are better at solving crimes. And as you can see, if you have all these different crime rates, we can maybe help reduce them or at least limit them. And the statistics are telling us that this tendency is going to keep on growing in terms of using low light performing cameras. So therefore, we should definitely consider this, offer these options to our customers. And apart from that, one thing is that we have the colored image, but they're also getting smarter and smarter, you know. They can classify and all these things. We can pick up metadata. We wouldn't be able to pick up the proper metadata with a IR camera. So to do some type of appearance search would be quite hard with an IR camera, right? The guy was wearing gray shoes and he was wearing a gray shirt with gray pants and so on and so on. So when we look at the low light performing range that we have had from Dahua, it started all from the Starlight first of all. Then we went to the Starlight Plus in 2018, and then we introduced our first full color camera. I hope that some of you have already seen some of those old videos I also made and some of my previous colleagues made about these full color cameras to show you how they actually work in real environments. Then we went in 2020 where we introduced our full color camera in 4 megapixel because the limitation of the first generation, or the first release of the full color was that when you get a little bit further away from the camera, it could be harder to describe. That also goes during the day, because during the day we had plenty of light, but the pixel amount that we had for such a wide range was usually not enough. It wasn't sufficient. Therefore, the limitation for describing people at distances was also there present during the day. With the 4 megapixel, we solved that. We still have a sensitive, very high sensitivity in terms of providing a colorful image. And the 4 megapixel, we also upgraded the sensors. We also upgraded the algorithms in there. So the analytics were quite advanced compared to what was happening in the first release of the cameras. Then we went in the 2021, where we released the Full Color 2.0. It was released from HQ, where we kind of started incorporating these new generations of cameras into our business. These cameras is a new range where we added some white light. We also added stuff like a better lens in terms of limiting the light pollution. We also added different type of models, so it was not just only the fixed model. So, and by the way, we also added from the beginning, we already added the full color range in the HDCVI, the coaxial models, so that you could use them with previous older solutions just by using the Dahua XVR, for instance, and then utilizing the wiring and everything, and then still use coaxial cameras if the customer was already on a budget. So some of the pain points, I would say, of the full color of the first generation of it was that whenever there was some strong light coming from the sides or from directly, since this camera is built for utilizing all the light, you can imagine when we try to utilize that strong light that is disturbing our image, that also becomes light pollution. So that was one of the pain points which we addressed in the 2.0. Apart from that, of course, as I mentioned, the range was a limit due to the resolution as well, or also the varifocal model not being available. So in the full color range, the key factors are a dual lens. This is the portfolio, a dual lens model. We have a 4K model as well. Then we have a varifocal model. And then we also added more AI possibilities in terms of scheduling them. So, but let's start by looking at what happened from the 1.0 to the 2.0 in the fixed lens. So first off, what happened was in the new full color 2.0 generation, we added white light. Why would we add white light? Because this camera sees at night when there's almost no light. What if there's no light whatsoever? Then we need to have some way of providing some supplementary white light. Why not just have that directly built into the camera instead of having that installed separately? Because having that installed separately, then that would usually increase the labor cost. Therefore, to have it in the camera would definitely be even better. And it's not just any type of white light, it's warm white light, because generally white light, if it's a high Kelvin level, it can be quite aggressive, but with these full color cameras, it's quite warm, so it doesn't appear as aggressive. So apart from that, we also had a period setting for our analytics so that we can change these analytics during the day, so that if we wanted to do perimeter protection, for instance, during the night, we would try to use the camera for people counting during the day, or it could be any other feature like heat mapping or whatsoever. We have these possibilities now. But to put it like very clearly, is that we improve the lens, first of all, and then we have less light pollution because it's a better hardware. And then it can cope with pitch black environments compared to the previous generation of it. So to put it even more simple, I addressed them right here, the differences between the first version or the first generation and the second generation. You have the second generation to the left, which also comes in a turret shape, which was not available in the first generation. So we have the dome, we have the bullet, and now we added the turret as well. if we try to look at the difference from a competing camera, which is the same resolution compared to our full color camera, this is kind of how it looks. Oh, sorry. This is our 1.0 where we have no supplementary light whatsoever. You still have a decent image, but it's not really useful. It's not that good, right? We have a lot of noise, as you can see. And this is because the camera does not have enough light. We have too limited amount of light. It is pitch black. But if we go over to our 2.0 camera, you can see that the image has significantly been improved. We have less noise levels to the right-hand side compared to the left side. Can you guys see the difference? Is it clear? You just write in the chat, no worries. Okay, good to hear. So there is definitely an improvement in terms of the quality of the camera. It has less noise. And in this situation, we're not even using the white light. Bear that in mind. So we wanted to try to see how much we can push a camera when we are using purely sensor. That's also why we turn off the IR light from the competing camera in order to see how good of a colored image can we provide. Because our main topic today is we want to see how good colored images we can have, not just some type of IR, because we could always find that in a lot of different existing cameras. Also, if you notice, you have a little bit of limited blurring on the right-hand side compared to the left-hand side. So I would generally advise some supplementary light in this situation. But as you can see, at least I can see a person and I can see the surroundings very clearly in color. So I do have some potential of getting some colorful imaging, right? And there you see, less noise. Also, the grass, the trees behind it are also popping out more nicely. The color of the fence, and you can see the houses behind it are also more clear. And this is purely the sky doing magic. Cameras with utilizing everything that's available, and this is what we get. But if we go on and try to add a little bit of supplementary light, what happens then? This is from our competing camera, the 4 megapixel again, which is supposed to be a low light camera. But as you can see, not sure I would call that low light as much. You can get something useful out of it when you have supplementary light, but not nearly as much as if you go over to our full color 2.0. That's kind of like night and day, right? If you see, we didn't even see the person on the left-hand side image. But on the full color, it's much more obvious. You can see colors of the description is very clear. And I'm wearing a, I don't know if you guys can see it, a orange sweater. But this is very limited light. It may look like a lot, but it is very, very limited. Just to give you a more clear image. Yeah, this shows. So it might look like that I have this bright projector of like 500 watts in my garden, but I actually don't. It's not that strong as it appears. As I said, just like IR cameras with great sensors, they utilize the light much better. And this is exactly what's happening with the full color camera as well. Also, when we talk analytics in terms of showing the differences between the 1.0 generation and the 2.0, I think we can safely say for the competing camera, it would be impossible to do any type of analytics when we have such a poor image. So it might be that you have a manufacturer or a camera that has wonderful analytics, but if the image is horrible, it's kind of like, It's kind of like driving a car that is like an off-roader car, like a Land Cruiser whatsoever, that deals great with tough environments. But if it's too foggy, then what's the purpose, right? It's not going to make any difference. It's just going to drive just as slow as any other car. But let's try to have a look at the analytics. This is from the first generation, again, no supplementary light, just to try to make things a little bit tougher. I thought, why not? Let's try to see them together compared. They do pretty good in terms of analytics anyway. We are able to at least classify that that's a human. So that's pretty good in these conditions. As you can see, this is 3:30 a.m. So what am I doing that late? This, exactly, to show you the differences, because these are the toughest environments as they would usually get. So of course, if you had a little bit of light on your house, everything changes, as you just saw with the small amount of supplementary light. I don't know if you noticed, but on the right-hand side, the camera actually detected the person a little bit fast. Let's just have that again. Sorry, got caught up. So try to pay attention, not right now when I'm going away from the camera, but when I'm trying to enter the premises again, and then you'll see the 2.0 is actually a little bit faster. And this makes absolute sense because we have a better image. It's easier to classify. Have a look right now. There we already have it. And the 1.0 is still struggling a little bit. And there we have it with the 1.0. So it is doing a decent job, even though we have extremely tough conditions. We have 0.02 lux in these situations. So that's dark. So if you don't know how much 0.02 lux is, I'm going to show you a comparison later on, and you'll see with our 4K camera, you'll be able to kind of have an idea about how dark that is. So, but let's go over to the next model, which is the dual lens model. So the whole purpose of the dual lens model is to kind of combine these two things of a colored camera and also a IR camera or black and white image. Why would I do that? If we try to compare them side by side, a IR camera would always be a little bit more crisper. The reason why that is in terms of the sharpness. The reason why that is because it's actually picking up all the brightness information even better than a colored camera. So just the brightness information that it's projecting, it will pick up better. So we will actually have a little bit of a sharper image, but we won't get any colored information. But if we combine that with a colored camera, which gives us all the details, but if it's too dark, first of all, a color camera does not use a full color camera does not use IR. So it's not even able to see IR in that wavelength, but it's able to see all colors. But what if we try to combine these two technologies together? Then this is exactly what we get. We get a camera that is able to combine these two technologies and create an image combined, which is clear, but also colored. And we also don't need any supplementary IR light in order to obtain this. So, sorry, not IR. We need IR, but not any white light. So, in terms of flashing cars, we have a question in terms of how it reacts to flashlights or cars. Everything depends on how you set up the camera. You have quite a lot of adjustments in terms of shutter speed and the aperture, or sorry, the gain level and so on. So it actually does much better than the first generation, and I'm going to show you just from a flashlight how it actually shows the difference. So the dual lens model also comes in different variations. I'm going to show you at the end of a table of the different models which are available, but the dual lens, which is this model, is not available yet. It's getting ready. So first of all, it has the 5 algorithms that we already talked about in terms of being able to do analytics. We have the SMD 3.0, just like in the upgraded version, as I said earlier on. What changed is, obviously, we have 2 sensors, one for the colored and one for the black and white image, and combining them. Also, we only use IR. We don't have to use white light. We can use the white light if we wanted to, or to trigger in terms of events. Also, if you notice on all of these full color cameras, you have a double VDR that is 140 dB. which means it copes much better than most other cameras with tough lighting conditions. So the WVDR does a better job. Yes, exactly. That's what I mean. Pure. You get a colored image with the IR light on. Yeah, this is kind of like whatever I've always been dreaming about. I remember early on working as an installer, like let's assume some 10 years ago when I was doing some installations as well. When customers ask me like, but why is the image black and white at night? I just laughed like, what did you expect? It's IR. But obviously people don't know any better. How would they know, right? So, but now everything changes. It's kind of a new era in being able to combine the IR and getting a colorful image is groundbreaking. So right now, I don't even have that model in hand. It's getting ready and we are waiting for it. But that's really going to change the game, I'm sure. And I'm going to show you plenty of videos of it later on. So this camera copes very well, even with pitch black environments. You don't have to have supplementary light to get a colored image. Then we have our varifocal model. The varifocal model, the obvious difference is, of course, the lens option. You have a, oh, sorry, not the option. You have a varifocal lens, which is adjustable in terms of how far or how near you're going to see. So, of course, one thing which is very important to understand is that this is also a game about pixels per meter. And some of you guys who have been to the training, certification trainings, we've been talking about this pixel per meter. So the wider we go, the more our pixels are distributed, the less clarity we would have, I would say. Yeah. The lower resolution that our interest would be. And the lower resolution, usually the less clear it is to see an image clearly. So this camera is great for entrances, especially because you have a narrower area. You could get a better description of that person. So apart from that, what happened compared to the, the first generation is that we added a two-way talk function. We added a built-in speaker so that you're able to talk directly. You also have a microphone that picks up, and it picks up great. You'll see. Apart from that, the white light range for the bullet shape is 70 meters. So whenever you go to the dome shape, it's a little bit more limited. So obviously the white light has to be a little stronger. Whenever you zoom in, you have a priority that's further away than you would with a fixed lens with a very wide scenario. So if we try to look at an example like this, this is from the fixed lens. I know it says HDMI box. That was just my typo because I was doing some recordings, forgot to change the name. But if you look here, as I said, this camera is great for city surveillance. We do have some lighting, but it's not nearly as much as it would appear if you went out there standing on the street. You can see now I parked my car quite far away. This would be somewhat 30 meters away, approximately. And if you wanted to see the detailing of that, that can be a little bit hard. I don't know if any of you guys can read the number plate off of it. I certainly can't. And if we try to see the description of a person when he gets closer, at least in somewhat range in order to see a person's face, or at least we get a description, but we're not nearly there when we have the very wide range. But if we go over to the varifocal model, this is kind of how it looks. Much more narrow area. We would usually need a little bit more light than we would with the fixed lens model when we zoom in that much. So as I said, this is all down to pixel per meter ratio. So the more we narrow down our focus, the better detailing we have the possibility to have, depending of course, the camera's, image sensor, and so on, in terms of how well it copes with low light performance. There you have it. I parked it right there. I don't know if anybody can read it. Can anybody read it and write it in the chat, the number plate, if you guys can read it? I guess nobody can read it. Yes, Peter, you're right. A lot of you guys are close. BZ78840. So that's the number plate. So very close, but at least we have a much better possibility. Also, if you look at the image of me when I'm getting closer to the camera in terms of describing, I think we can all agree that it's easier to describe me based on the image to the right than on the left. I have a better possibility to identify this person from an image or from a gallery than I would from the left-hand side image, where the image was much wider. Also, this is an example. When we zoom in, we get better and better detailing. Apart from that, the difference between the IR cameras and the full color cameras is that we don't have reflections. So if we have somewhat sufficient light, and I'm not talking about 100 lux or 150 lux or 50 lux, if we have somewhat lighting conditions, we'll be able to see number plates. They won't reflect, because this is some of the pain points of IR, is that we get reflections. If there's a lot of people very close and the IR is not adapting that well on number plates. By the way, number plates are usually made out of this reflective material, which makes it a little bit hard to be able to see the number plate unless we play around with a lot of settings in the cameras, but then we lose a lot of the other stuff that was important to us in terms of being able to see the surroundings very clearly. So this is again one of the benefits of the varifocal, but also the 4K range, depending on whichever the focus of interest is. Apart from that, I don't know if you guys can hear anything in the video. I assume not, but I'm just going to explain. But the cameras have a built-in mic, which also exists in the varifocal 4K models as well. So this is an image from our recording of our backyard at the office quite late. And this just shows how dark it is. This is from my phone. I have a iPhone that does pretty good low light colored recordings, but even though you can see it's quite hard to see. There's not a lot of light, but if you look, it's hard to see. My camera has a hard time focusing, but over there I have a pole standing with a camera, with a varifocal camera. So one thing is that you get a clear understanding of how well it works when I narrow down the zoom. But second of all, I also get an idea about how the microphone works. So I'm going to demonstrate that right here. So this is from the camera. Quite a difference, huh? Can any of you hear anything from the video? Ah, that's too bad. I have this part on YouTube anyway, so you guys can go watch it on YouTube. That's too bad you guys can't hear the audio. I guess it's something to do with Zoom, since it's not providing the audio. But what I'm saying here is that I'm speaking directly into the camera, and the microphone of the camera is picking it up, and I'm approximately 10 meters away from the camera. Second of all, we live on a quite busy street. The ones who have already visited us know that we live on a busy street where there's a lot of heavy traffic. Still, there is a possibility to hear me very clearly. Oh, that's too bad you guys can't hear it yet. And now I'm standing 20 meters away. I guess you guys can't hear it. But I'm standing 20 meters away. I'm standing 20 meters away, and it's actually possible to hear me quite well. And I'm not speaking in a higher pitch than I am right now. So I'm not yelling or anything, but you'll be able to see from the YouTube clip where you could hear the audio very clearly. And now I'm pushing it beyond its limit, but it's just to prove a point, the fact that the built-in mic is significantly better than it ever was. And if you look here, I'm 40 meters away. It's hard to hear anything when you look in the YouTube video as well, but it is possible to hear something that I'm saying. Now I'm standing 40 meters away. Imagine that, a camera being able to, and as you can see when I zoom out, it really shows how far I am from the camera, right? It's impressive, right? First of all, the low light performance. Second of all, the audio, you can hear that from YouTube. it actually picks up that I'm saying I'm 40 meters away. Yes, sure. I'm going to show that to you at the end. I've already added the link for the YouTube.
Hello, Mr. Farhan. How long will it take you to complete the training? We have another mission.
As you can hear, that was my colleague. That was from the built-in speaker. This again shows that we can talk directly. That could be from the app. I'm gonna be finished as soon as possible. I still have some time.
Okay, waiting for you.
So the audio is very clear. This could be construction sites, remote locations. You can talk directly from the DMSS app. You can also talk directly from DSS from the platform, or if you have a microphone connected to the NVR, you're able to utilize those features. So imagine if you had a remote location, construction site, 10 cameras, you can talk from each one of them. You don't even need an NVR or anything. You could even provide this for remote locations, for cabins or whatsoever, with just an SD card. That will be enough, and just connect it by scanning. That's it. And then you have a two-way talk. You can pick up all the audio just like I did, and then you can also talk to people directly. And you can also, by the way, talking about the speaker feature, you can add your own custom audio files directly into the camera. So if we go over to the 4K model, which is my absolute favorite, the reason why 4K is my favorite is because I think we came up with a groundbreaking functionality, and also some, I would say, game-changing low-light performance with a high resolution. But if we go through the specs of the 4K model, first of all, the most important thing, if you notice, is on the right-hand side on the sensor size. The sensor size is significantly bigger than the 1/1.8 inch or the Starlight sensors, which was almost 1/3 of an inch. But I'm going to show you kind of a comparison to put those things into perspective, and also show you the performance of how big a difference it actually makes. So first of all, we also have the SSA in terms of the dynamic range, which automatically adapts to the scene in terms of when it needs to use WDR and so on and so on. I have a question. Can this work with PoE Ethernet only? Which part do you mean? Just elaborate on which part you mean, if it can work with PoE Ethernet only. Yeah, right now what we are doing is we are just connecting it by PoE. That's it. So as long as, even if you were in the same network, that would be fine. Yes, you can trigger playback of audio from the IVS or SND. For instance, if somebody steps over some areas, then you can trigger this audio file directly from the camera. I already added some. Let me just try to trigger that one while we add it. Let me just log in here. Give me a sec. And excuse me that it's in Danish. So that was just me adding some custom audio. This just shows the possibilities with it. So it is possible, yeah. Great. So, and by the way, before going on, all these 5 series cameras, they support the ePoE function, which gives you the long distance range. So, but I'm going to show you that in a chart. But let's try to focus on the sensor size, as I said before. So before now, full color cameras, we had the first generation. We had the 1/2.8 inch sensor, which was great for the 2 megapixel range. Then we increased in the Starlight Plus, but also in the 4 megapixel full color cameras, we used a sensor that was significantly larger. So that was 1/1.8 inch. The reason why this is important is in order to be able to keep the same ratio. So if you want to expect somewhat a similar low light performance in a higher resolution, we need to increase the sensor size. If we don't increase the sensor size, the low light performance will be significantly lower. And this is also what you see many times in the industry. You get a higher resolution camera from some manufacturer, but the performance is just not good enough. Oh, did the image of me disappear? Can you guys see me still? Okay, don't know why it changed from here. Anyway, so the ratio, if we want to provide a similar quality, the ratio needs to be the same. And as you can see, the pixel size, which is 2.9 micrometer, is the ratio is the same. So therefore, we can expect something similar. Great low light performance. So if we try to compare that with the new sensor sizes, we have to downsize it a little bit in order to show the size of the new sensor, which is 1/1.2 inch. So therefore, we have grounds for using higher resolution. If we don't use a sensor that is large enough, and as you can see, this is significantly bigger than the previous one. And by the way, talking about the sensor type, this is a Sony IMX485 sensor, which is a newer sensor. Again, high resolution, we need a larger sensor. So I already did the calculation in terms of how large it is compared to the other one. It's actually 2.25 times bigger. So this just puts things into perspective, right? Even though it may not sound so different where it's 1/1.8 inch or 1/1.2 inch, but there's quite a big difference. And again, to put things into perspective, let's imagine you have a window, all right? That's a 4 megapixel sensor. So first of all, if we want to have the low light performance of this sensor, which is significantly larger, this means it's going to allow more light in. This is also what we learned from the beginning, that we need as much light as possible. So we're going to be able to let in more light since we have a larger sensor. And also the aperture is quite important, because many other low light performing cameras, not the full color range from Dahua, but many other manufacturers, they have an aperture that is significantly lower. And the aperture is kind of like the blinds of a window. So whenever you turn down the blinds, of course, you're going to get less light in, right? So to keep the same ratio, we didn't just put in more, smaller windows. We just increased the window size so we could get more light in. So I hope this gives you an understanding of what we actually did. Here you have it. We increased each pixel size with 110%, which gives you like amazing low light performance. And it's very limited how many manufacturers who have those size of sensors, which are possible to buy even in these desperate times where everything is increasing in price. So we tried to do kind of a comparison chart to give you an understanding of these different models. They may not be completely similar in terms of price, but we can go beyond like exploding the budget and find something better. We could do that with Dahua as well. But I wanted to give you an idea about what's possible to buy for money for average people. So first of all, if we notice, we are using a larger sensor than most of our competitors over here for the low light cameras. I try to use the similar resolution to give you kind of a fair comparison. And by the way, these are all considered low light performance cameras. But if I think they are low light performance, then ours, I would say, is super low light performance then. But one thing is the sensor size, but if you notice, another thing is the aperture. On most of these other brands over here, you'll see that the aperture is significantly less bright or darker, I would say. And some of these cameras, first of all, they only allow, if you go over to these cameras right here, which are f1.6, which is the aperture, how wide, how much light it lets in, compared to the 1.0. So these cameras are actually, just because of the aperture, letting in only 39% of the light amount in compared to the 1.0. So not only a bigger sensor, but also a larger aperture we have, again, which creates great image. That's also why you will see high resolution cameras. Many other brands usually don't do as good compared to the low resolution. It's just a matter of increasing that sensor size. Apart from that, we can see WVDR, we are doing quite a good job in terms of tough lighting conditions. When we look at the motion detection classification, the smart motion detection 3.0, it's a little bit different. Some support it, some don't support it. If we go to the intelligent analysis, we have some manufacturers that are not supporting as much unless you go with a significantly more expensive camera. And already these comparisons that I'm doing here are with these red ones, we are talking 4 to 5 times the price of a full color 4K camera from Dahua. So there is quite a big difference. And many times, if I'm not saying some are, if somebody tells you that size doesn't really matter, I think we all know that it does. And I hope I've proven that point. Next up, if we look at some of the other features, we're the only ones who have the built-in two-way talk feature. We have the speaker, some have the mic, but most of them don't even have speaker or mic. Also, the IP classification is also pretty good in terms of tougher environments. If we go to the temperature range, you can see over here we have brand B, where the temperature range is a little bit wider than ours. But I would say I compared actually the coldest situation in Iceland, for instance. That was like minus 39 degrees Celsius. So I think we'll do quite fine, generally speaking. So those extra 10 degrees are not going to make a difference. Of course, if it's minus 30 degrees, that could make a difference. But when we are talking so vast ranges, then it's not going to make enough of a difference. And then we have a huge advantage in the bottom. As you can see, we have the 800-meter EPOE supported. So imagine if you're doing construction sites, this is definitely going to change everything. You'll have a huge advantage over there as well. So it's time. Let's try to see if we can compare the 1/1.8 inch with the 1/1.2 inch. So this is what we get if we have the 1/1.8 inch, and this is what we get when we have the 1/1.2 inch. Quite a big difference, right? I don't know if you noticed that I was sitting there. Did you guys notice before it showed? Exactly. Again, if you look at the right part of the image, doesn't matter if it's the smaller sensor size or the larger sensor size, you can see things are a little bit darker on the left-hand side of the image, but not nearly as dark as they are in the smaller sensor. Again, which shows that the camera needs significantly less light in order to cope well. Also, to kind of highlight this part. Yeah, that's what I do for a living at night. My neighbor is also like this guy freaking every weekend. Doesn't he have any other hobbies? If I try to compare them here, you'll be able to see even there is a possibility to see a much clearer face image. Look at the difference. Again, when we push it to run only in a colored mode, we are pushing the sensors to beyond the limit, more or less. No other light was added on the camera or anything, apart from that little bit of light I have. But usually when you have a strong light source on one side of it, it's not an advantage for a camera, right? Because you end up with a very dark area on the opposite side. Because as I said, the lighting is not evenly distributed. But I think we can agree that our 4K camera is doing a great job, right? And this is the moment I've been waiting for, the low light test. It wouldn't be fun if we didn't try to measure how dark it is, right? Because sometimes I know some of you guys who have been playing with the full color cameras also have tried this. It's kind of hard to replicate how dark it is, or to tell people like, it's not dark, it's super dark. So I thought I would try to do a small test to show you. This is from an industrial area where we have more or less no light. There is a little bit of light, but that's on the other side of a road from a different company, which is approximately, what, 150 meters away from where we are standing. So I have a lux meter with me, and I'm actually gonna try to show you, this is from our competing camera, which also has a low light performing sensor. But I don't know if I would call that low light. And then you can see the recording from my phone. Can we agree that that's dark? I hope so. And then once I'm done, I'm gonna measure it with the lux meter, and I'm standing 8 meters away from the camera. I think maybe this one was 5, sorry. But anyway, I'm gonna go back, and then you'll be able to see how dark it actually is. Again, this is from the monitor in my car, and we have 0.02 lux. And look at that image. That's breathtaking, right? The fact that you can have so bright colors. We are even picking up metadata. Look at that. This is from the camera. There you see, you do have a little bit of ghosting because there's like absolutely no light, but I think we can agree that it's easy to describe the appearance that I have, what I'm wearing and stuff, right? So that was the low light performance test I was doing. Isn't that ridiculous? How dark it is, but we can see a colored image. And even look at the background, all the way in the back, we can still see stuff. With the other image already in the front of it, it was impossible. So as I was saying, we can pick up metadata, we can pick up the colors of the clothes. If we have a AI NVR connected, we could pick up lots of more metadata directly, because the AI NVR has a more advanced way of doing analytics. And in this case, it was done from the camera, from the NVR, because the camera does not have the possibility to pick up the colors of vehicles and people's clothing. So that requires an AI NVR. When we talk about light pollution, there was somebody who said, like, what about when you have some light? Then we try to compare the should be right around here. Let's see. In this case, we had the 4K camera running, and I should be walking around with the light shortly, I hope. Else I added the wrong video. I can see I should have trimmed that significantly down. I think maybe I had added the wrong. Yeah, this is from the camera right there, and it's actually suppressing the light quite well. I think I had one from the first generation as well. I think I forgot to add that one. Sorry, guys. But if we try to go over when we use supplementary light from the camera in itself, everything gets even better. When you add the supplementary light, you get to kind of understand a little bit better how dark it is. This is from the 1.0 camera. And as you can see, it's doing a pretty good job with a little bit of supplementary light. And at this situation, we are talking 5 meters. I think it was 1 lux or something. So it is already quite dark. And it's doing a pretty good job. But if we compare that with the 4K model, which does a much better job, again, at distributing it and creating an even scene, you can see how much better it suppresses the light, right? Do you guys see a big difference? Maybe easier to see here. You guys see a big difference? Yeah. So the cameras are already upgraded in terms of coping better with light pollution. So I hope that proves my point. And as I said, most of these videos are already in the unboxing video on YouTube, and I'll show you the link later on. But in order to try to show you how dark it was, before when I was doing the color performance without any supplementary light, it was also 0.02 lux. That's dark. Next to where I live, I have a kindergarten where they have this very strong white light projector light, which kind of like looks like a prison or something. Whenever it lights up, it kind of lights up the whole world, it looks like. But even though when I was standing 8 meters away from it, I had 47 lux. Imagine before, when I was adding the white light, I had in this situation, I had 0.63 lux. That's how dark it was at the same difference. And over here, I had 47 lux. That's 75 times more light than I had from my supplementary light in the 4K camera. So this, I hope, puts things a little bit into perspective in terms of how little amount of light is required, so it doesn't have to look like a prison or anything. So that one. So I thought, why not have a little bit fun? Because as I said, they could be used for time lapses. And I did a small time lapse to show you that this camera is excellent. This is the 4K camera again, with the time lapse feature, to show you that we get colored image. So it's quite dark anyway, we get a much brighter image. So if you look here, this starts at 1 a.m. in the morning, a couple of days ago. No, sorry, yesterday's morning. And then we have the image. Look how well it's doing also when we have the sunlight. Still, there is no challenge whatsoever for the 4K camera because of the 140 dB double VDR. You can see now we're getting at, it's turning night. It's like 6 p.m., 8 p.m. So it's getting significantly darker. I think we can all agree at that time it's very dark. And it's not because I have a very lit area. It is quite dark, but the full color camera is just doing such an amazing job. So for time lapse, this is amazing. And look at the sky, how bright it is, right? So in this time lapse, I did one picture every 3 minutes, running it for 24 hours. So 480 pictures I did. And as you can see, we have no noise, more or less. So this does not mean necessarily, even though that gas prices have increased quite a lot everywhere, that of course you can't afford it. These cameras are too expensive and this and that. No worries, you can still afford them. We don't require you to spend your whole budget just because you're choosing a great camera. We definitely think that great cameras or low light performing cameras with high resolution should be for everyone. So therefore, we are running a promotion that is running until April 15th. With these different models. You guys can write them down. These are the models that we have available in the promotion. So as you can see, we have the fixed lens divided here. Fixed lens, we have the varifocal, and then we have the 4K models. I'll just wait a second if somebody needs to snapshot this part. Or else you could always contact your local distributor and they will tell you which products are on campaign. Or better yet, you could follow us. I'll show you a couple of links afterwards. But now we talked about a lot of different things. I hope that I intrigued you into understanding that Full Color 2.0 is like next level in terms of colored imaging at night. But it can be very hard to remember all those things that I said. So therefore, we have the YouTube link. You guys can just scan that from your phone. You should be able to jump right into our YouTube channel. And the latest video is with me unboxing the 2.0, where most of these videos are already combined in a complete series. So that should be I think I can't really come to think of any situation where it's not really suitable at all. I would say sometimes if you have very long distances, PTZ cameras and stuff, they don't come in full color ranges. If you have extreme long distances, IR would usually be preferred because the white light that would be needed when you have very, very long distances would usually not be sufficient. So if you need extreme long distances, I would maybe focus on the IR. But as I said, it comes at a cost. You lose all the colored information. So it's kind of hard to say when is it better or when it isn't. I would say before in time where we didn't have the white light, the camera, then it wasn't as good in terms of when it was pitch black environments, but we already took care of that with the white light. Let's just wait. We're getting to the next slide, which is the Q&A session. Yeah, I guess you guys already started. With these new cameras with SMD 3.0, how far away can you really detect humans and not false detect on animals? First of all, if you talk about how well it detects humans and not animals, as you can see, we already improved the algorithm to 3.0, which already adapts to many of these things. So these algorithms do get trained in terms of whenever there is an upgrade, when there is a 4.0 or from 1.0. Second of all, there's not really one number to say directly. Everything depends on which resolution and of course also which low light performance that you're using. So first of all, we have a pixel requirement, but if you had a pixel requirement where you had poor performance from the camera because it's too dark or the camera sensor is not good enough, then that pixel size or pixel requirement is not going to matter, right? So it's kind of like combining these two things. So we do workshops over here. We do certification trainings where we go through some of this stuff in terms of pixel requirements, but everything depends on which camera you're choosing. All right, Kimo, take care. We're also done. So no problem. I guess it went a little bit over time, but I hope it was worth your time. Yeah, we have the recording and I'm going to send the link to all of you guys on the email part. I have everybody's email. So thank you very much for joining. I hope I enlightened you about what Full Color 2.0 is all about. Make sure to follow us on LinkedIn and Facebook, because over there we are going to present many of these things, new technologies. I show a lot of different tests that I do on YouTube as well. Follow us or subscribe on YouTube channel, because over there we are sharing lots of this content so that it's useful for you guys to share. Last but not least, if you guys want to hook up on LinkedIn, I'm available on your right-hand side. So whenever there's new stuff, new technologies, follow us on Facebook or LinkedIn or any other SoMe channel, and you'll be able to find those. So thank you very much for joining in. Hope I spent your time well, and take care and stay safe out there. I'm just going to